Hi, my name is Sam Led, and welcome to The Fearless Now. This is for you in the nosebleed seats, if you're looking for an easier way to approach anxiety, stress, and unhealthy habits from the inside out. There's no techniques and no strategies, so sit back, relax, and let me be your peace of mind Uber driver, here on The Fearless Now. Welcome to The Fearless Now podcast. My name is Sam Led. I'm a transformational coach, soon to be author of the book Fearless, and I'm using that soon in quotes because I've been saying that the last year and a half, but hopefully it'll be out in April. And I have a very special guest. I was just on her podcast and I've listened to our episode, Jami, like a couple of times already. It's so awesome. Don't need to, ego aside, it's a humble, amazing episode. Jami Fregrau has a critically acclaimed podcast called the Neurodivergent Nurse, but she's not only a brilliant podcaster, she's also a brilliant mental health advocate. She's also, struggled and persevered in real time with ADHD, just like I have, having a brilliant neurodiverse mind. Don't get too much of an ego yet.
It's already, my head's already.
Her head's expanding as we speak. But she also is heart-centered and is a real change agent in the mental health advocacy, ADHD community, but also being a real mental health advocate and a supporter for those lost sailors out there who really think that they're, they don't have a grip on what they're struggling with, especially with ADHD, which can feel that way sometimes. So I'm going to read her bio from her podcast. It's wonderful. The Neurodivergent Nurse is a weekly podcast hosted by Jami, a nurse who has ADHD. On this podcast, she discusses all things ADHD. Her journey with ADHD is just beginning as she learns about this diagnosis and how to navigate through it. Enjoy this messy and raw journey as she shares what she has learned and the occasional embarrassing stories along the way. And ladies and gentlemen, her podcast is on all the major platforms. It's just, you need to listen to it because it's not only is it Technicolor and she is so creative with each episode, but she also brings on a real variety of interesting leaders in the mental health community, other practitioners, authors, creative types. So go check out our podcast, The Neurodivergent Nurse. Okay, we got that out of the way.
The end, cut. That's all we need. That's a great episode.
We're done. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, see you later. Have a good weekend.
I just need to take you around as my hype man everywhere I go. Can I just have you as my theme of Jami in this world? Yeah.
You already have a spokesman. Everyone needs a spokesman. Speak to my pipe man. He's right there. He'll tell you all about me. You don't need anything else. It's interesting. And then we're going to get to your journey because this is your podcast. I'm going to shut up and you're going to share some fresh flavor of your life and your journey and your experience. About 2 years ago, I was visiting my sister and her family in Chappaqua, New York, which is a suburb an hour from New York City. And I was in line going to the bathroom outside this very famous for the town pizza restaurant called Pizza. I think it's called Pizza Land. Maybe it's not, but it's a pizza restaurant. It's right next to the Metro North Station going into New York City. And I'm in line and in front of me is Bill Clinton because he lives there randomly. Billy Clinton, right? And he's with his Secret Service agent. And, it's the first time I've ever met a president before. But it's kind of like, how you mentioned I could be your spokesman, your hype person. Well, imagine walking around with a Secret Service person everywhere you go for life, for the rest of your life. I had to ask him permission to talk to him. Right. And when I met him, it was like, I was like his best friend. It's like Bill Clinton has his own hype man. I mean, he's also, a politician, so he could be a little bit full of baloney. Anyways, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It's so weird being on this side of an episode, though.
I know.
I'm just going to be honest with you.
You doing all right?
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. We could turn it around.
I feel so selfish talking, like even the idea of talking just about me just feels like a selfish thing.
Well, we could do half where you continue our interview from last time. And then
there you go.
That'd be really interesting. Maybe we'll do that another time.
A crossover, like real legit.
Totally. Like, because we're going to definitely do part 2 for part 3, because part 2, we split it in half, which was brilliant, by the way. That's
you just had so much great stuff to talk about, and I wanted it. I sent you this message yesterday or the day before, and I said it was so great, and there was just so much knowledge and encouragement and just beauty that came from you in that episode. And as I was going through and editing it, I was like, no, I don't want this to be that long episode, because I want people to be able to digest all of your words, all of the advice. And, the longer it is, you only have so much room in your head to comprehend at a time, right? Yeah. Especially our heads.
Especially ours. Our bandwidth is a precious commodity for ADHD, right? And especially in neurodiverse folks. Your journey is fascinating to me, because you're a mental health advocate, but you're also a person who's a clinical practitioner. You're a nurse, but you're working in the health profession, saving people's lives, doing the good work and making a great living doing it, and with ADHD. Mm-hmm. And no one taught you how to use the ADHD equipment, because we've all, and you and I have been conditioned, and most neurodiverse people with ADHD or whatever you've been blessed with, the label, quote unquote, we've never been taught, we've been conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with us or there's some dysfunction. We've never really been shown how to use this very fast, very curious, very sensitive machine, this high performance Ferrari-esque brain that is too fast for our own good sometimes, as a superpower, as a tool correctly, or how to use it at all. We had to learn through our own trials and tribulations ourselves. And I look back at it, you can't go back in time, that if there wasn't a special class, an instructor that it's like, when a pilot gets flight training, needs like 5,000 hours before he can fly a plane. I wish we had that kind of thing for our brains. It would have just saved a lot of time. And
no doubt. Yeah. And even when you were saying that the things that you were alluding to the things that we were told to believe about ourselves or whatever, I came from a very positive background. I'm my mom's only child. I'm my dad's. Oh, wow. What's that?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I'm my mom's only kid. And I have 2 half brothers from my dad's first marriage. And he always wanted a little girl, and they're 10 and 13 years older. So, I was just that. My parents thought I was just the most magical gift on this planet. So I had so much positivity around me and so much encouragement and so much, they drove me they encouraged me to be a good human being. But still, even with all of the wonderful help, the wonderful affirmations, it was still so hard, because while I got the affirmations from the people who love me most, to me, I didn't give myself the same grace or encouragement, especially in nursing school. It was just the difficulties there, because I didn't know that I had ADHD at the time, but the difficulties, I just felt like I was so dumb or I couldn't grasp, while I knew that I was an intelligent person, why I wasn't smart enough to do this and everyone else around me could. It was just very deflating so often.
And I love what you said there. It's like, even though I came from, really nurturing home and upbringing, ADHD doesn't discriminate whether you're, it's just how our brain works. It works differently. And even today, we don't really have a true understanding of how it really works. We're doing our best. we're doing our best. We're trying to still kind of understand how, and the brain's a very sophisticated instrument, and it's we need a couple more thousand years to really, through evolution, to really use our brain to the best of our ability. But for you, Jami, you didn't really did you get diagnosed too much later? I mean, till after nursing school? You're already
a year ago. And I think that it's a year ago today.
Oh, wow.
A year ago today.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And you're talking to a fellow, a brother in arms, a partner in crime. Wow. That's amazing. But I think for you, why you were able to keep moving despite having a brain that was misunderstood by the school systems. I mean, growing up, especially for me, there were I had real strengths in some areas, real strengths. But holy cow, my weaknesses were a train wreck. And it's like, it's an extreme, which makes a lot of sense in many respects and also doesn't.
And it's also incredibly difficult because while I don't like having weaknesses, period, I want to be the best there is in everything that I do or everything that I've ever done. And that includes education. I want to be the smartest. I want to be the funniest. Especially when it comes to knowledge, but it's like, I know I'm not going to be an Olympic star athlete, right? I would love to be, but realistically, that's not going to be who I am. And I can accept that. But I think that so often the difficulty lies when you talk about the things that you were good at academically and the things that you're not, is when you have to use those things that are a weakness and as that stepping stone to accomplish your goals. That's when it really becomes mentally and emotionally debilitating at times, because that's when you're really hard on yourself, not just knowing that you're not as good as everyone else, where these concepts are a struggle to you and they're not to your peers, but that you have to grasp and have truly understand those concepts in order to be a successful person in the realm that you want to be in.
And it's also hard to language. I'm speaking for myself, but I think you could also relate. And I love that your honesty with that the struggle is real. And even when we're struggling, we still have to perform. Even when we're not understanding something, or it is a real growing edge or a thorn in our side in many respects, is that you still got to wake up in the morning and go to work and figure it out as an adult. But the interesting thing is all of that, especially our frailties, we do have difficulty really explaining what's really going on within us, because we literally have a hard time telling our loved ones, our partner, our family, our coworkers that this is what happens with our brains. There's nothing wrong with us. There's 100% nothing wrong with us. That we have a neurodiverse brain that works differently than your brain, and we need a tribe around us that creates space for when we get overstimulated, right? Or we forgetful sometimes, not because we're stupid or not because we can't handle the work. It's just because our brain is going so fast. And even if we take, I take medication, you take medication, it's not perfect. It has its side effects. But for me, the way maybe you can relate to this, when I was introduced to this understanding that I shared on your show, blabbered on about too much maybe, I was able to really see what the brain was up to more, being this observer of my thinking. That what happened is that even though my brain works really fast, I was able to be with my thoughts and not in my thoughts. And for you as a nurse, you're on the go. You're doing it's a brilliant thing because your brain works it's so engineered and it's a high performance, it's a Ferrari or a Porsche brain to do all those things at once. But when it's it needs a break. It needs to go into the pit, to change the tires or just put the engines in neutral. So thinking slows down because it's going too fast. How do you share that with, your coworkers? How does that manifest for you in a day-to-day existence, especially as a nurse?
The coworker part is not difficult for me, but if we rewind back to the difficulties people with ADHD have articulating why things are hard for us, right? Yeah. Why we are struggling in this neurotypical world, and we can't accurately express that to the people that do care about us or the people that we are trying to explain that while they don't have such difficulties, why we do. I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that we feel a lot more. We think all the time, but we are so in tune to feelings and emotions and things like that. So I wonder if that just adds to such difficulty.
It was my growing edge. I mean, and you can relate too. I mean, even as a teenager, I was diagnosed when I was in my early 20s. I mean, I was misdiagnosed 1,000 times. With the diagnoses were so out there. I still to this day can't tell you what they are. I mean, it doesn't even, it's just, that's what was so frustrating, but also kind of liberating because I was just doing my best but also really struggling academically and fitting in because I was more sensitive. We feel a lot more.
Exactly.
We're more empathic. We can sense things a lot more. We're able to kind of, and again, it's a gift, but we're not taught how to use it or taught how to be the conscious observer when we are stuck. And you and I think, remember it was that dark, what was it from the Never-Ending Story? Remember
right.
The forest of sorrow. And that was the swamp of sorrow. That a lot of us ADHDers, for whatever reason, get caught up in when someone tells us bad news or someone says something to us that is not nice, or it doesn't matter, but we hold on to that a lot more. And it's beautiful, but it's also difficult sometimes because I get stuck in that swamp of sorrow. But I do know, which is liberating for me, and it's peace of mind for me, that I need to have that energy of that emotional energy to move through me. Once it moves through me and my thoughts settle, I'm back to Sam again. And there's nothing I can do about it. And if I try to ignore it, it's just going to make it bigger.
Yeah. And circling back to issues with work and having to communicate such difficulties, when I was in nursing school, I withdrew my second semester because I didn't think I was going to be smart. I had a B in both of my classes that I was taking. But with the finals, I didn't think that I would be able to score high enough to maintain a B because in nursing school, a C is an F. And I withdrew because I didn't have enough faith in myself. Took a year off. But I remember talking to the teacher when I was withdrawing, and she said, Jami, I just don't think that this is a career for you because we can't teach you to critically think. And I was thinking, I can't critically think. My dad's always told me that I have common sense, and that is a gift in general that he knew from the beginning that I was very logical and I could think outside of the box and I could put pieces together in a world sense that other people found difficult. And then after I graduated nursing school, okay, wonderful. Passed NCLEX first time, though didn't think I was smart enough to pass even a final exam, but passed boards. I got a job working in an ICU in Tennessee. For 3 months, we had to work on the floor first before we could move to the ICU. And I had such a difficult time with that, juggling 6, 7, 8 patients, brand new nurse, went to the ICU. And I was very open and transparent about the things that I didn't know because nursing school, you learn in a bubble. It's not real life. It's not, you just get pieces of things that hopefully you'll remember. So
Right.
you can use later.
It's like an immersion. It's like, yeah, it's a crash course. It's an extended crash course in medicine and biology and stuff.
But I was
chemistry.
Also, while I didn't want anybody to think that I was dumb, right? I didn't want anyone to think that I didn't know things. I also knew there was a human being that depended on me knowing these things and not having an ounce of doubt. So I would always ask questions, even if I had the answer, just to make sure. Because when you have a preceptor, that's what they're there for, is for you to feel comfortable, for you to keep people safe until you're out on your own. And that manager, she pulled me in after I was in the ICU for a week or two. And she said, Jami, I think that you're great. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm like, this ICU manager thinks that I'm great. And I really needed that boost of confidence. And she said, but I think, but I think that you are a great floor nurse and you don't have what it takes to be an ICU nurse. And it broke me. I cried, I struggled, and I was thinking, my teacher was right. Now I have this manager telling me that I'm not smart enough to do this desire that I have. I don't want to do that. I was crying in the closet every day at 5:00. That's not the life that I want. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to have to focus on this. I ended up taking another job because my grandmother got sick in North Carolina, which is what brought me here. And I got a job in the neuro ICU, which is what I really wanted. I wanted the brain. And it was at Wake Forest Baptist, one of the top neuro hospitals in the country, top 50.
Amazing.
And while I was there, my preceptor said in front of me to another preceptor that had her orientee, she said, well, at least they gave you someone smart. At least they gave you someone intelligent enough to do this job, saying that I wasn't. And again, just another blow. And from that point, I ended up being a dedicated charge nurse in that unit. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And then I worked at Johns Hopkins in their neuro ICU, at Yale in their neuro ICU, Mass Gen, which is the Harvard hospital, right?
So you were a traveling nurse.
I did do traveling for about 4 years. Mm-hmm. But I thought, you know what?
In Connecticut, New Haven.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was just all of those tell me that I'm not good enough. And I could have used that. All of these people telling me that I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, I didn't have what it took. And it could have injured me to the point that I wouldn't do what makes me happiest in this world today. Or I could have taken all of their discouragement and said, let me prove you wrong. I'm going to work even harder. And I'm not going to be just what you want me to be, but I'm going to be even better. And I think those of us with ADHD, we have to take those negative things that come our way, because we will have those because we think differently. And when people see us think differently, they do have a misconception that we're not as smart. We're not as intelligent because we don't do things just like normal, quote unquote, people do. They see that as a problem with us and a lack of intelligence and ability. And I encourage whoever's listening, take that and turn it into power. Take that into a motor to prove them wrong.
And you had the insight within yourself because Jami had that gift of insight to prove them wrong.
It was tough.
And I'm sure, and especially for folks, like us that have that very sensitive ADHD kind of, I don't know. It's like a sixth sense. It's an emotional sixth sense that works. It's great because we're really compassionate and we have a lot of empathy for people. But when it comes to performing at work and task management and being on top of things with our job, when someone tells us that, for a lot of us, it's disappointing in a neurotypical, whatever that is, person. Amplify that by like 10. And I mean, that's from my experience. And so for you to see that, I think it was like a glimpse. You saw a glimpse beyond all that thinking around that you're not good enough. You saw a glimpse of your true nature, of who you are, your essential self, which is good enough, perfect underneath all that noise. You indirectly, like, it was this like calm, cool, collected, no, I'm going to prove them wrong.
Well, as I said,
I got this.
If it wasn't for the encouragement from my family, then I don't think that it's all an accumulation of environment. It's all an accumulation of what's going on internally and that drive as well. But with me being so sensitive to rejection, though, if I don't do something well, I'm going to do it 8 million more times than the normal person to do it well and, to accomplish that. But I remember my mom would tell me that I was where I was meant to be. She's Christian. I have Christian beliefs. I don't care who believes what they believe, whatever helps gear you and motivate you to be a good person in this world, cling to it. But anyhow, she would always tell me, God has you in this place for a reason, and you're strong enough to be able to handle this, but other people aren't. And through this, you're going to be able to share your story and to encourage those people that they can accomplish things too. You just have to make it through this dark time. And then other people are going to be able to have belief in themselves because you are an example of success it's not success, but like to successfully accomplish.
No, but it is success because it's almost like you had to go through that struggle to experience it, because part of being empathic, especially as a healthcare provider, is to kind of understand what people are going through, even if it's not ADHD and getting through school, but just as the human experience. And so it's a special skill. We all have the gift of empathy, but for us ADHDers in this, with our neurodiverse unique brain, it's fine-tuned, zeroed in. I don't know, maybe because we hyperfocus a lot, or it's because I think it's the divinity within us. I think your mom was spot on. And
she's a brilliant person.
And so are you. I mean, that's, but because she sees under the noise, she sees who Jami is. This caring, super smart, competitive, funny, caring person that is a real change agent. Now, your ego's growing. Her head is swelling even bigger.
I don't know how I'm going to get through the door when this episode is over.
Seriously, it's going to be, but it's truth. It's a truth, not a. It has absolutely nothing to do with your processing abilities, as with a neurodiverse ADHD brain. It's your essential nature being Jami. It's who you are. And in the Bible, I mean, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or you believe in
or nothing,
or you believe in
agnostic, atheist,
whatever doesn't matter. In the Bible, I mean, all the great sages have pointed to this, that there's something beyond our machinery when we get really present. And there's something that's really special within us, this calmness within us, this cool collectiveness within us. And it's hard to see that as an ADHDer because the noise is loud. Let's like be honest. It's loud. It's in Technicolor, and we're really curious people. We got 30 YouTube windows open at once. Pick one. Like, I don't know which one to pick because it's all happening at us all at once. But in your profession, why you're so good at it is because you need that high stimulus in order to like. And
yes, Sam, not only
when you're like boom, 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 like urgency, emergency, like you need that. That's the rush. Your brain is, again, it's a Ferrari. It's an F1 car.
And I did neuro ICU for 8 to 10 years ish.
Yeah.
And then I didn't think that I was going to love anything more than neuro because I love the brain and people with brain injuries. They are my heart. They're my favorite patient population. I just want to kiss all over their cheeks. I love those people. But I switched over to rapid response. holy cow.
What's rapid response?
Rapid response is 911 inside of the hospital. There's only one or two of us on shift any day.
Yeah.
So if there's an emergency, you're the person that goes. You're running the code. Or if they think that something's wrong, their patient has an oxygen in their 70s. Well, normal is 90 to 100. And so 70s is bad. But, we're the one that goes up there. And so, you have to be quick on your feet. You have to just have this cascade that opens in your mind of options and be able to pick the
drop-down boxes, right?
Like a
drop-down box.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of drop-down boxes.
And then when the phone rings, if I'm in the office and the phone rings, you don't know what they're going to need on the other side of the line. Is the person not have a pulse? Does the person, it's just the best job for a ADHD nurse. I'm telling you, I love it so much.
Jami, because all your KSAs come out, knowledge, skills, and abilities. We call that in leadership development, KSAs, and it's so cheesy, but your brain is working you're in an environment where your brain flourishes. Your brain is high performing. You're not going to put a Toyota Prius on a racetrack racing Porsches and, Ferraris and etc. You're going to put the, right. So you're exactly where you should be. And it's interesting that despite, our very apparent, again, it's hard to language this because there's nothing wrong with us, but we've been conditioned to believe we're dysfunctional. Like I still go back to, we literally, our brain has been, these neural patterns have been reformed by, I've been told thousands of times, or I've read. You can type in, and we talked about this during, when I was on your podcast, that you can type in ADHD and brain, or ADHD and prefrontal cortex. And you know what the first thing that comes up?
What is the first thing that comes up?
Can I get a drum roll? No.
Yeah.
It says damaged prefrontal cortex. And there's something wrong. I can't language it, but there's something wrong with this executive functioning. Like that's the first thing that imagine a teenager, right? And they have this fresh diagnosis and they type in ADHD and prefrontal cortex, right? Or they just type in ADHD, whatever. They're going to see damaged, you have impaired executive functioning. You have, your body metabolizes dopamine too much. Your brain, needs all this stuff. We're looking at it the wrong way. Like, why are we looking at it that way? It's no one's fault. We're just conditioned to look at things as problems. What if we were, again, I mentioned this because it's important that if we were, from an early age, shown how to use this ADHD instrument. God, maybe we need to go through this struggle. I don't know. Again, it's above my pay grade. So.
But there's so much dismantling, even to learn how to do things from the beginning. If we were to, would it cause us to flourish more? I think so. I think you're right. Absolutely spot on. But there's so many systemic things that happen that prevent us from even being seen as someone with ADHD, right? Like we know that women are misdiagnosed until adulthood. We know that people of color, Black, Brown, Hispanics, these are individuals that are far less diagnosed. I did an episode of that about disproportionate ADHD diagnosis in people of color. And all of those things would have to go away in order for children to be able to be put into a system or a way that they can be educated, that they can enjoy social activities that are more conducive for their brains, their life, their individual personalities. And until we do that, it's just a utopia, right?
Seriously, it's. I don't know how you went to I went to public school, okay, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at educators or school systems. There's nobody's perfect. There's good and bad things with our public education. I'm not trying to criticize it. But they segregated folks like us. I mean, I don't know. Some ADHDers can have conditioned themselves to throw this mask up, right? I'm sure you did this too.
Sure.
Growing up, we put this mask on so people can't see it. They can't. We look normal. We look like one of them, whatever that is, even though that doesn't even exist. We're all together. But when our so-called symptoms, as being conditioned to say it's a symptomatology or this that needs to be treated, when our ADHD behaviors come out sometimes, we're then told, well, you need to go to this building, like especially in my public school, high school, folks like neurodiverse folks had to go to a special building. It's like, right? The people with, disordered, right? Impaired, developmental folks that have Asperger's, severe ADHD, learning disabilities. They're going into a special building. Like we're quarantining the neurodiverse folks. I remember because I used to get extra math too. I was terrible at math. Still terrible at math. Thank God we have computers. I can, the cheat sheet is I remember like when I got my first calculator, I'm like, why do I need to learn this crap? Because I could just do it on the calculator, and we don't need to learn this crap. Anyways, I remember getting extra math tutoring after school. I think it was calculus, and I just couldn't do it. For whatever reason, it took me too long to do the equations and stuff. And it was in a separate building. And on the door, it said slow learning development was one.
Oh my goodness.
And this isn't the early 90s. Like this isn't that long ago when I was in high school. But
I wonder if that's the difference because my early years, elementary and middle school years, I lived in a very poor town. Mm-hmm. And the resources were limited as a whole for people. There were less than 500 people in the town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a village.
Yeah, a hamlet. It's a hamlet. Is it even called? Everybody. Everybody knows your stuff. Oh my goodness.
So I don't think that I felt like I don't think that I was looked at as having a learning disorder, though my mom would find out what I didn't do well, and that's all I would do, right? But I just wonder if because the town in general didn't have enough resources, so I was more of, the middle of the line. I was one of everyone, but it was because we had money, but no one else really did.
That's a blessing in some respects, but people looked at everybody in the town as more equal, even though some people had a lot more money, and there was a lot of poor folks. And we see that throughout the world in poor communities where there's...
Well, and we know poor communities, part of your property tax goes towards the money that the education system gets to have. So if everyone in the town lives in single and double wide trailers, your property tax is not going to be high enough to really be able to fund teachers alone to have resources to help children to the best of their abilities. I mean, they can only do so much without items or great books or, things cost money in this world.
And I love that you kind of pointed back to, like, you were raised in a small town and not a wealthy town. Y'all had more resources, financial resources, that's a blessing, but you felt like you fit in more. Now imagine
only scholastically. Okay. Personality-wise, I was an outcast.
Oh,
I was bullied.
Really?
Yeah.
I was too.
Terribly.
I was very short. I was really small until I'm like, Mom, what's going on with this growth thing? Like, I was really small until I was 17, and I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I'm patient now. I get it. Late bloomer. I remember when I was a little kid, I would read the fourth grade nothing, the book, the Judy Blume book.
I'm sure if I saw it, I would. Okay, I used to love Judy Blume. So,
yes. Well, it's about like, I felt like the odd man out because I was really creative, and you're really creative, and I would think out of the box where everything was regimented, and especially in the classroom. I wasn't conventional. I couldn't sit still. I still can't sit still. My thinking was more idiosyncratic. If you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And I remember like, and things that like, and I'm sure maybe it's because you're an old soul and I'm an old soul. I mean, woo-woo-wise.
Oh, you're spot on. You're spot on.
Totally. You're an old soul. I remember my father's a physician. I don't know if I told you he's a doctor, and my father was involved in the 80s. Remember the cocaine and crack cocaine epidemic.
War on drugs.
War on drugs, right? Nancy Reagan, right? Remember? Well, we were little back then, but I did a project on cocaine in my science class, but it was too in depth. If you know, and I was 11, by the way. Just okay. It was too. The way I wrote it, because I love to write.
Me too.
Because you have a brilliant neurodiverse brain that thinks out of the box, we see it from different angles, which is why it's a blessing. But I don't think society is prepared for a lot of our capabilities. This ends part one of my conversation with the brilliant Jami Fregrau, the neurodivergent nurse. We just had so much to talk about, and the conversation went over an hour and a half. So we're breaking this into 2 parts. And so we will see you for part 2 of my conversation with the wonderful and insightful Jami Fregrau of the Neurodivergent Nurse podcast. She has so much to offer, so much to share with not only my audience, but with her audience and the world. So stay tuned for the next episode with Jami Fregrau and the Neurodivergent Nurse here on the Fearless Now podcast.